Good morning. Lord, help me make this video. So I don't quite know what I want to talk about today, but I've got a couple of tidbits that I have been chewing on, and I don't really have like a theme that's coming together. But I recently was looking at some stuff on TikTok, some apologetic stuff, and there were two stories that were brought up, which was Elisha and the bears that like mauled like 20 something people. And then I was thinking about Noah being saved from the ark, from the flood. And the story of Elisha, like, it's really cool when you can go back to these stories. You know, it's been a while since you studied them, probably like years um, since you like looked at them again and really examined them. And so that was one of those stories. And I was like, you know what? I bet you I could find some insights here that I haven't seen before um, reading it now. And so I reread it. And I always, my opinion, first of all, if you're not familiar with the story, basically there was Elijah and Elisha. And Elijah, who was the more popular, or I guess more well known prophet, the one that John the Baptist was supposed to be, Lord, like the second coming of Elijah. Elijah met Jesus on the Mountain of Transfiguration. A lot of Spirit of Elijah stuff. Okay, well, Elijah never died, and that's another reason why he stands out, especially in like eschatology. He's sort of like a type and shadow of the church that get raptured, blah, blah, blah. So Enoch and Elijah are the two men that are mentioned in the Bible that basically never died in the natural way. They were taken by God to heaven, which is really kind of strange because, or interesting because you never really hear anything, like you don't get like this super origin story about Elijah and why he was able to sort of get this treatment. Um, we don't, Enoch has a little bit of a context of why God favored him and why he ended up just getting taken by God up to heaven, and then that was it. Um, but Elijah, as far as aside from being like a prophet of note that did like some cool miracles, some of the cooler miracles, I guess, in the Bible. We don't see why he just suddenly one day got taken to heaven by God. We just know that it happened. And strangely enough, Elisha, uh, who I've heard some people saying his name Elisha, so you don't get them confused. I'm like, why would you do that? Just say Elisha, and then people will know that you're talking about Elisha, which I think it's cool that their names are so close. Like, what are the odds of that? So Elisha was called to sort of be the prophet after Elijah. It's a bit like I don't know, it's like a Yoda, Luke Skywalker situation. It's a mentor mentee situation. And um, Elisha ends up doing a lot of miracles that are on par with Elijah. Um, some might even say better because he asks for a double portion of his spirit before he gets taken away by God. And it looks like that's what happened because um, he lives out his whole life and is prophet for that entire span of time. I think he's like maybe like 2 or 3 kings worth of um, service. So if you don't know, like as the kings become, once they go into their king era, Israel goes into their king era, there's always a prophet that sort of, he's like an advisor to the king, or he's just like speaks on behalf of God to the king. And then we see like a prophet becoming like a real office during the time of the kings. And um, it's really funny because when you read the story, like I backed up some more to get to the Elijah part of the story, because this the story about bears mauling people in the name of God is like really small, and it literally like it's all chapter 2 is him being sort of Elijah's protege, and then by the end of it he is like the main guy because Elijah's gone and he stepped in his place. So Elijah literally parted like the Jordan. I don't know, for giggles. I don't know. He had to get to the other side of the Jordan, so he like took his cloak and did a parted the sea moment. But it was the Jordan. It wasn't the Red Sea. But so basically, on the day that Elijah is taken up, they keep going from town to town, and every time they go to, there's prophets in that town, and the prophets are going, "Hey, do you know your master's going to be taken away today," which was just really interesting. And that was another thing that I never like focused on before. A lot of times, like you read things and it's just like, you just don't focus on them because you don't, I don't know. The day comes and you feel like, okay, today's the day that I'm going to really like dig into this. But unless that happens, you're just kind of going, okay. Or just like, you don't even have to necessarily dig into it, but your eye focuses on it. You focus in on it and you go, what's that about? And you have some more context from the last time you read, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of what I was doing. But basically, when I heard the story, let me just read you the story because it's literally 2 sentences. Okay, so this is it. It's chapter 2 of First Kings, Second Kings, whatever. Second Kings, chapter 2, verse 23. From there, Elisha went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some boys came out of the town and jeered at him. "Get out of here, Baldy," they said. "Get out of here, Baldy." He turned around and looked at them and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. And he went on to Mount Carmel and from there returned to Samaria. Now, the only people that really have an issue with this story are people who are new to the Bible, or they saw some atheist website that told them like all the weird stories to check out and just go read them. But I don't know, when you're reading that, you just kind of know, like, you're just like, ooh. I mean, it's the ancient world beyond what you can imagine. And I don't know, it kind of sticks out when you've got people like just a group of dudes making fun of a prophet. Like, it sticks out. It's super weird. It does not happen. Like in the whole history of the Bible, you don't get people just doing that. Like, um, I mean, the next instance of that is like when they mocked Jesus on the cross. Like, so it was weird. So you kind of just go, okay, they were dumb to do that. And then every once in a while, you'll get, a pastor who's trying to bring some context to it. And they'll talk about, why is there 42 youths? Like, they're probably not 10 years old. They're probably more in their teens or 20s, which means they should be out there doing some work or having a family. Like, what are they doing? Why is there like, it says that they mauled 42 of them, meaning there's 2 bears that came out and mauled 42 of them, which means there might have been more of them. Was it 50? Was it 60? Who knows? But that is a huge number of people. So it kind of sounds low key like he was in danger. Like, I don't know that they were just like making fun of his bald head and like, I don't think they were just like, you know, trying to like put him up on TikTok and like taking a TikTok of like, look at this bald headed dude we found. I think that, I don't know. And then when you think about like I kind of looked into the geography because I was curious, and I started like getting way into the geography of things of what I was reading, and just knowing that, I don't know. First of all, like people, like for him and Elijah to go around from town to town, and every time they got to a town, the prophets would come out and say, "Hey, you know your master's being taken today." Like these towns knew who these men were, um, and it wasn't like today where you can just be like, "Oh, the prophets." Nobody, if you're not a prophet, you don't keep up with the prophets, and like you have all of these different like curated things in your life, and if you don't know, like people knew about stuff. Why would anybody? There was not enough going on that there was separate things in life. People knew who these people were. So uh, either either they didn't know who Elisha was, which would have been crazy, or they did know who Elisha was, and that would have been crazy. So, and then right before he did this, um, he was in Jericho, and the people of the city came to him and said, the water is bad in the town, and so nothing grows. And so he did a miracle, and like he said, bring me some salt water or whatever, or bring me some salt. And he went and he threw it in the water, and it purified the water of the town. So he's going around. So word spreads when that happens. When your town has bad water, and the prophet comes into town and completely changes the entire resource situation for you, and now you're going to have agriculture where you didn't have any, like the word spread, people know who this guy is. So he just got done doing that. Now he's walking, like how far out of the way do you think he walked that people would know who he was? Like, so the whole situation is weird. um by and large, though, even if you're not looking that far into the context, for the most part, you're like, okay, prophet of God, and you can tell the way that the story is being told. Um, they're trying to tell you like they're why are they bringing up something of note? It's like, oh, let me tell you this other thing that happened. Why are they doing that? So that you can judge him for killing people, or is it to show the level of power he had? Like if this was a movie, and let's make Elisha the main protagonist, and you get these rabble rousers that come out try to start something with him, and let's make it an explosion, let's make it a gunfight, let's make it a John Wick situation. We would just watch that and we would be like, he's badass, like we wouldn't. But you'd have to be really really like not missing the point to be like, wait, what did he do? And like these are humanitarian violations. It's like, and not to say like, hey, read it like a superhero, but I'm just saying there's a context where this doesn't bother us, where over we're not going, well, how is this of God? How is this whatever? Like, there's a context in life that we recognize where we wouldn't just like automatically go, well, like, why is God killing people? It's like, okay, well, we all, and everybody, of course, understands by and large that, if people have it coming, then stuff be happening. But like, so that's the angle, like what I was telling you about the pastors, like that's the angle that they typically have to go in with, is like, um, well, they were probably young men in their 20s, and to me it looks like a clear like he's in danger. Why is there like a dozen, like 4 dozen dudes crowding around one guy just to call him Baldy? Like, is that really what's going on? Like, it's so weird. It's like this West Side Story moment. Like, what's going on? So, at any rate, the thing that jumped out at me though was, it says he turned around and looked at them and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. And then two bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. Um, the thing that stood out to me is that he called the curse down on them and the curse came down. That's the point. The point is, he's a prophet, and what are you doing? Like, this is someone who talks to God. This is someone who, like, you should have the respect there. I don't think if if he was just being like some haughty dude, would the curse have worked? I don't know. But we do see there's some moments actually that in the Bible, certain instances where um, the word your words have the power to do things, and it really doesn't matter, like, especially if you're a prophet, if you have this prophet mantle, like, I think there's a couple stories. There's one story where a guy who used to be a prophet basically tricked this other guy into disobeying God, and um, and the word of the Lord came through the guy who used to be a prophet and condemned the other prophet and said, because you listened to him and not, and didn't do what I told you, because he's supposed to go down, he was supposed to, like, um, return down a certain road, and he didn't. He came the path. The prophet lied to him. The guy that used to be a prophet lied to him and said, "No, come to my house. Like, it's fine, and have a meal with me." And so he tricked him into. I think he even, like, said, like, "No, God just told me." Like, I don't know. It was really, like, sketchy, but, like, God spoke through that old prophet to tell the new prophet, like, you're going to be punished and you're going to die because you didn't do what I said. And the old prophet that lied didn't really get any type of repercussions, I don't think. So there's this thing of just, like, when you have a mantle like this, it's high. You get high authority, but then you also have high consequences when you don't obey God. And so, yeah, he asked for a double portion of Elijah's anointing. Yeah, he called down a curse on them, and immediately, with haste, something happened, for sure, which is really, like, more of what you're supposed to be getting from the story, and not just like, oh, that's inhumane. I'm pretty sure, like, it's the two witnesses are going to be able to call down fire from heaven in the end time, so we're going to be seeing this again, and I wonder what people will say then when folks get fire called down on them because they're trying to stop the two prophets from doing what they're doing, or the two witnesses from doing what they're doing. So yeah, I think that it's just, I just addressed it mostly because I just thought it was a cool story and I wanted to revisit it, not because I wanted to, like, address people's concerns about, like, the useless killing of people in the Bible, because I honestly don't know what world people are living in, that uh, it's just weird. It's just weird. Like, everything is like a daycare. It's like they want to live in a daycare. Like, the world is not a daycare. Like, our American thing that we've got going on. First of all, there's plenty of people falling through the cracks and dying to their death for nonsense, for really dumb stuff, uh, for other people's lie to be maintained. Like, but I mean, you really just sound crazy and out of touch when you're just like, why did so many people die in that war? It's like, okay. Anyways, so yeah, that happened. But then I was also thinking about, like, Noah and this thing that God does, where he says that he spared Noah, and a lot of people think, like, the way that people view um, Lord help me make this video. Did I say that already? I can't remember. Retroactively. So, um, the way that people look at how Noah or how God destroyed the world, and they think like that was a lot of people are really interested in indicting God's choices for some reason, but they think that that was inhumane. It was like the worst humanitarian. Like I've heard a couple of atheist weirdos say that as like the worst humanitarian offense ever. But the thing is, like he could have just wiped it all out. Like you really have to look at the choices that God makes because, like with Adam and Eve, he could have wiped them out completely and started over. Um, More than likely, what would happen is that the same thing would keep happening again and again. It's like, but only because he's setting it up a certain way. The fact that he's setting it up and the way that he's setting it up is showing you what he's desiring to get out of it. So, um, it's not a quaint little story that you're telling your kids before bed. The idea of giving them all the options of things to eat, and then one option that will change everything, and telling them like, which is really just should just be a simple thing that you could tell somebody. It shouldn't be something that like makes you suddenly tempted to disobey. Like just stay away from the thing he told you to stay away from. But anyway, and then he could have wiped them out after that and said, "Oh, they're ruined, erase." But he kept it going, and then it got so bad, and I don't think people have really like stopped to think how bad it could have been because considering the fact that we're all still here, it got so bad that he was like, "This might have been a bad idea." Like he was like, "I don't know if I should have made these people." That's really bad. It was really bad. And he found one man. He found one man, and it wasn't a lot of people look at his family and they're wondering, like, well, why did they make it? It says, he says in other places, like, I know I remember in Ezekiel where he says something like, um, if Daniel, this is a prophet talking about right before, I don't know if it was about Judah or Israel, but he's like, um, if Daniel and Noah and I don't know, he just named like three righteous men, but he was like, if Daniel, Noah, and Abraham, or he might even said Job. He did say Job. He said, if these three men were in this city, like they could only they would be saved, just them and no one else. So like, okay, so it says, even if these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they could save only themselves by their righteousness, declares the sovereign Lord. So that might not seem like anything right there, but he's first of all he's telling you that people's righteousness saves whole cities, which is reinforced by what Abraham asks, because when God comes down and talks to him about the same subject and says, he was talking about Sodom and Gomorrah and saying, like, I'm going to destroy the city because of the evil in it. And Abraham um, basically has the same question that these atheists have, except he's not a jerk about it. And he goes, well, you're not going to destroy a city. Like, what if there's righteous people in it? Like, so he goes, if there's 50 righteous people in a city, would you like spare it? And he goes, if there's 50 righteous people in a city, I'll spare an entire city. Now, our cities are a little bit more sprawling. I can't imagine. I'm pretty sure Sodom and Gomorrah were probably like a couple thousand people. So, but that's still, I mean, what are we talking about? 0.1%, if the 0.1% of the people in the city are righteous, he'll spare the entire city. So that's actually a really profound story that people need to know. So if God destroyed the entire world and the only people that could be saved was Noah and his family, like Noah's righteousness was only enough to save his own family. So his the rest of his family, which did seem pretty sketch. I mean, his sons were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham was a hot mess. A lot of things after Noah died did not get passed on because Noah was righteous, and it just kind of went off the rails, except for Shem. So and you go, well, why on earth did these people get saved and everyone else died? Like, what's the big deal? Well, it was Noah's righteousness that saved the rest of his family. So Abraham, back to Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham gets down to, he asked God again and again, again, a really profound story, because we see Abraham essentially risking his life to keep asking God, like, where his mercy stops. And I don't know. Because would it be life threatening? I don't know. But he kept asking. So he was like, well, what if it was 40? What about 30? What about 20? And I guess for me, like, I would have been done at 50. That would have been plenty of information for me. He got down to 10. He said, what if there's 10 people in the city? And God said, I won't destroy the city if there's 10 righteous. And then Abraham stopped. He was like, well, that sounds reasonable. And you know what? It seems to be lower than that. It seems to be 8, because that's how many were in the ark with Noah, or it was 8 of them total. So it seems to be lower than 10, actually. So people really need to understand. I mean, part of the reason why this thing is going on so long, and so there's so much evil in the world, is because there's so many righteous in the world. And it might not be enough. It's not going to be enough for you to live comfortably, but it's enough for God to keep God from destroying everything. So, these people that blame God when he's destroys it, they blame God when he keeps it going, and it's just chaos everywhere. They just blame. But like, what you're missing is that he's keeping it going for the sake of a very, very, very small minority. Um, Me personally, like, yeah, no, I don't want to see everything destroyed if there's not going to be anything after it. But if it's a rapture, then yeah, go and torch it. I don't care, but because I don't want to just live in a devastated, destroyed atmosphere until the rebirth happens. Like, I'm not trying to do that, but I think that's the point. Like, he could be destroying all of this stuff because the evil has gotten so bad. And then the people that are just functioning are just like, wait, what? Oh no. Like, we've lost our lives because of these people. And part of you thinks, like, why doesn't he do it like that? Like, or do you think that might seem like that's more his style? It's like, well, let's punish the good people ought to be going out and convincing the bad people to stop being bad. Like, but no, he doesn't do that. He just lets it go and go and go, so that the righteous can live safely in their nice place that he made. So, yeah, I was thinking about that. And then another random thing that I'm just going to fit in, because there's really probably no other place for me to talk about this. But I think a lot about, when I was young, I was very into, like, you know, stuff that young people are drawn to. So, like, the fame and the Hollywood and music and all of this stuff. So, that's just always been an interest of mine. And so I love watching, Inside of the Actor Studio. That used to be like a big thing, and that was on Bravo. And like, I love listening to industry stories and how people got cast for this and that. And I used to always like puzzle over the way that they would tell these stories about how people would just, you find the story behind this amazing, it's like Star Wars or some iconic role, and they tell this story about how, this person got sick at the last minute, or it's almost never just this kind of like standard industry, like, oh well, this person got sick, or I auditioned for it and I got it. And it's usually some crazy thing, like I was going to go home and I was going to quit entirely, and then I came back. And yeah, some of this could be fabricated, but over like the last 30-ish years, you hear all of these strange stories. And I just remember being young and just being confused. I would be, because to me it would sound like the way that Christians talked about things in church, about things happening for them, and how it would be like this divine intervention thing that would happen. And I would be like, man, this sounds exactly like um, church testimonies. Like, how is that even possible? Like, to the point where it would be like, that's God. Like it just was like it had all the fingerprints and the hallmarks. And of course, they wouldn't attribute it to God. It would be like, well, somebody's looking out for me, or luck, or this, or my grandmother, or whatever, my dead grandmother, made sure that I caught that bus or whatever. And I would just be so confused because they had no clue. They knew it was weird. They knew it was, one heck of a coincidence. It was weird enough to make them like go to attribute it to something. They didn't attribute it to God. I didn't attribute it to God, because it was just like, they're not even Christians. They're not saved. They're not, believing. They're not trusting. They're not doing all this stuff. Like, why are they having these stories? And then it literally just dawned on me, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something, where I was like, oh, well, God, he just loves everybody. Like, he really does. Like, the thing that we're always telling people is true, and he really just does things for everybody. Like, does he care about the movies being made? It's like, it's not even necessary. Like, the level of care that we think that God would have to have, because it's very hard for us to orchestrate things. So we think he's putting in this like super big extra thing about it. And all he is just coordinating everyone's life, because that's his job to do that. And so, yeah, and it's not just those. That was just one specific example where it's like you could get like a bunch in a row. Like, you get like 12 of these stories that are just like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, that's how you got this? But yeah, anybody that has any sort of anecdote like that, the people that end up living next to their brother, their long lost brother, these things like this, it's like, those local news type stories. And you go, well, that's so crazy. And it's like, yeah, God loves everybody. It's because God loves everybody. It makes total sense. You're like, well, how come God is doing the same thing for them as he's doing for me? It's like, because that thing that you're constantly telling people about God loving everybody is actually true. Like, maybe let's go with that. Like, he's invested. He's equally invested in everybody's life. Like, it's not just some incentive to become a Christian that you get these divine whatevers. And I even remember like a guy telling me, watching someone's video, and they're talking about like God took him into a vision, or like, uh, an angel was showing him like how God had orchestrated this family who was like, they were like, it was like some desert place, and he didn't even know where he was at, but he knew it wasn't America. He knew it was like the Middle East, and these people who didn't even worship, they were pagan. They didn't even worship a monotheistic God. and he had like made a way for them to like have food that day or whatever it was, or get a something. And uh and the angel was telling him like, yeah, this is what our God, your father's doing every single day. And there's going to be countless stories of the things that he's done. And it's like, it literally tells us in the Bible to be perfect as your heavenly father's perfect. And Jesus spent so much time trying to drill into everybody like how we don't need to worry about anything because of how valuable we are and how much our Father in heaven cares about us and all of this stuff. And so, like, it's just so funny to me like how long it took me to like put those concepts together and be like, oh, so he's not just like pulling out the guns when you become a Christian. It's in fact what it seems more like is that you just become more aware of it when you're a Christian. When you're not a Christian, you just think it's whatever. Especially all the scientist people telling you things, everything is a coincidence and whatever. And then it's either that or your horoscope or your crystals or karma or all of these other things. So yeah, that was just something else I was thinking about. So yeah, okay. Thanks for listening to my ranty, rambly message for today, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.